Adele. Thank you so much for joining us today in the episode. Hope that you have enjoyed your weekend so far, and we're so glad to welcome you back on campus on Friday for a presentation on how PhD student can actually take industry job position as one of the great job opportunity after they graduate. And then welcome back again for today's talk about the topic of mental health care exactly for a PhD student. So I know that we have been knowing each other for years, but for the audience who may want to get to know you. So Adele, almost a year after you finish your PhD journey at ETAP department, how is your life now? And can you tell us a little bit about yourself for people who want to know you?
Sure. Thank you so much for asking me to come back on Friday and also to share my experience on this podcast. Everything that ETAP Docs is doing, like I said on Friday, but just to reiterate on the podcast, is really great. And I think that the current e-board is elevating everything that we've done previously, which is really cool to see. So my experience, my little bit about where I am at now in my past. I just graduated in May, and so I spent 6 years getting my PhD and my master's combined, so it was a very long road, and I had defended my proposal in 2020, I think. So I had the first couple of years of just kind of doing my master's coursework and my dissertation, or my PhD coursework before doing the dissertation, and got the master's in 2019. And then the year of the pandemic, I defended my proposal, and then I spent the last 2 years writing and finishing my dissertation all throughout that time. So I think it's definitely pertinent that we're talking about mental health, because that was everyone, whether you're doing a PhD or not, that was a really challenging time for everybody. So and my life now is really good. So I got a job in industry, and so I work for an ed tech company now, working on language courses, and that is kind of my dream job. So I'm very excited about that. So now my life is good and stable, and everything is going pretty well. But up until I got the job, you don't really know, what's going to happen. And I was talking about that on Friday a little bit too. And everything worked out, but definitely the time that you're doing your PhD is a time of uncertainty. And I've definitely felt that. But so things have changed a lot for me, I guess, is my closing statement for that question is things have kind of changed a lot in the last year.
Yeah, and actually when you mentioned about your journey, you are using the word, my life is stable now. So do you think that the word you use later, which is indicate your PhD journey, maybe the word like uncertainties? So what kind of uncertainties that you have experienced during your PhD that you kind of like contrasts with the life that you are having right now? So I guess, if I ask you to close your eyes and remember your PhD program and your personal journey, how would you describe that time though?
Sure. Yeah, it's definitely a lot of uncertainty. And what I mean by that is it's a lot of ways. First of all, you don't know for sure that you're going to finish, at the whole thing. And then for me at least, every paper, every assignment, every deadline, it was just pressure. And am I going to get this done? And on top of, I had both worked in school, like as a GA and getting the stipend and everything. And I also have worked outside of that, like having a full-time job. And so financially, it's very unstable. And even if you are a GA or a TA, and for anyone that is maybe not familiar with what that like terminology is graduate assistant or teaching assistant, just, someone who's helping out with courses or has an on-campus job, and you get a stipend associated with that and also your tuition paid for. But the issue with that is usually that the stipends are not very high. So you're not making a ton of money while you're getting your PhD. And it's not like you're 21 and getting your PhD where you're in college and it's kind of okay if you're not making a lot of money. Some people have families that they have to support with this money. I mean, I'm not married and I don't have any kids, and I still found it a little bit challenging at times because while I had the GA position for a while, even in the summer, you don't know what you're going to do. And you don't know if you're going to publish something. You don't know, what class you're going to teach until like the month before.
Very last
starts.
minute, yeah.
Yes, definitely. And so there's just basically nothing is certain. That's kind of at least how I felt. I wanted to finish, but still you don't know because it depends on really if your work is accepted. So that's a challenging thing. Like your whole life is kind of dependent on your school. And I think that just creates a lot of uncertainty and a lot of pressure. So now I guess I could get fired from my job technically, but it's just much more like, okay, I went to school, I got the degree, I got a job, and that's kind of like what the end goal always was. So now that I've achieved that, it's kind of like I feel like I've moved into a different phase where, I guess because the PhD degree actually determines so much of your life. Like if I hadn't finished, for example, and I had just stuck with the master's, there's nothing wrong with having a master's, but that does change job opportunity outlooks. So I guess that's kind of the way in my head it's sort of compared to like time of uncertainty, time of stability.
So in that area whatsoever, did you ever have a thought about kind of giving up? Basically because it's too much.
Definitely. I did. I thought about it a lot, actually. I think up until and through getting my master's, I didn't think about it so much because I was still in the coursework phase, and it's much easier to stay in the program when you have good support and you're around people all the time that are also working on things. But as you move through the program, and then especially doing my proposal and my dissertation during the pandemic, I mean, it wasn't just isolation in PhD student life. It was like you couldn't go outside and do anything in the world with your friends. So even on the rare occasions where I would have time to do social things, there wasn't anything social to do anymore. Everything was on the computer, which is where I was already kind of living, so to speak, while I was writing. So yeah, I did think about giving up a lot at the end.
Yeah, so in those critical moments, I guess there also like your inner voice or somebody else outside, like in your circle, they kind of like encourage you to kind of keep going and keep pushing through.
Yeah, well, I was a little bit of both because I would ask myself, do I really want to finish this degree? And what would my life look like if I didn't finish it? And what will it look like if I do finish it? And every time I kept coming back with, no, I really do want the degree. So I think to anyone out there who is really, truly suffering in the PhD program and you don't want to do it, I don't think that that's a sustainable way to continue, just my personal opinion, because it's challenging even if you want it with all your heart, But I also had really, really supportive family and friends. I mean, everybody was always like, I can't wait till you're a doctor. I can't wait till, you graduate. It's going to be so awesome. And even now my family, they address all my mail like Dr. Adele Tui, which is really cute. And my friends do that too. So I always had very supportive friends and family, but again, not everyone has that. So I think that I was very lucky because I did have kind of both an inner motivation and an external motivation.
Yeah, so it seems the journey did require a lot of your emotional, psychological, and like social well-being development, and like the whole progress of just taking care of yourself. So how did you, besides the support that you receive from your family, your friends, and the inner voice inside you saying let's keep moving forward, but things could have got worsened if you didn't take care of yourself physically and emotionally speaking. So how did you take care of yourself regarding those aspects that happened around you when you were in your final years?
Yes, that's a really good question. So I well, I've always kind of struggled with mental health. Like I started having a lot of anxiety when I was in high school, and so for me, therapy and meditation have actually been a part of my life for well, more than half my life at this point. Um, and so I think that whether you have a diagnosed mental health condition or not, you can benefit from therapy. You know, everyone can go, and there shouldn't be any like stigma or shame about it, because it's really nice to just have somebody that kind of has um, no personal opinion or anything invested in your life, you know, because you could talk to a friend or to your parents or something maybe, which is not a bad thing to do, but a person who's like trained to listen to you
Like
and
professional. Yeah.
professional therapy, yeah, they you know, it's their job, and so they know how to help you with certain things. And so I learned a lot of really valuable tools by going to therapy, and also meditation. I've been meditating since I was maybe 19. And for me, it just calms me down a lot. So a lot of times I would feel really overwhelmed, right? Because you have like 5 assignments to do, and I have to, you know, grade my students' papers, and I have to do this, and this, and then like regular life things. And um, even just earlier today, actually, I just had a lot of things that I wanted to get done. But before starting, I'll always take maybe 10 minutes and meditate. And I use an app called Insight Timer, which is a really helpful app. And they just have tons of different kinds of guided meditations, but also just a timer if you can sit quietly. I still struggle with that after a decade of meditating. I still can't sit
Yeah,
quietly.
meditation is quite hard actually, especially for people that have never done it before, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, and so I still use like a guided visualization kind of a thing, and that's the great thing about meditation is that there's all different types, so
Yeah.
you can find something that works for you. And I guess a form of meditation is also like my physical health is definitely connected to my mental health as well. So during the pandemic, I guess in 2020, I started going for walks a lot, and I love the beach, and I don't live near the beach now, but I used to. And so I would walk by the beach or just go down to kind of like anywhere there's water. I live near 3 different rivers now, so I like to go to the rivers and walk. And I think that kind of like helps, you know, you get fresh air, your body is moving. And I think that a lot of, you know, like what I'm saying now, like going to therapy, which might take an hour of your time every week or every other week or however often you go, and then taking a walk and meditating. When I feel overwhelmed, I tend to think, but if I take an hour to go do something else, then I'm wasting that time because I'm not working on my dissertation. But the truth is, for me at least, that when I take that time, I can actually focus and be more calm, and I feel a lot better, and I actually end up being way more productive because I probably would have just spent that hour, that 10 minutes or however long, just like worrying about all the things I have to do. So I think those are probably like the big three things for me: therapy, meditation, and walking, or any exercise that you like to do, you know.
Yeah, so you did mention about the journey of starting a meditation with the help of an app, and also, some physical activity like going for a walk, cleaning your house, or going and do exercises, for example. But I think the notions of getting therapy, which is reaching out to a professional um, person and like expert who have the technique and the methodology to help you with your mental processes is also a new idea for many people, from people who are coming from different backgrounds and different cultures, for example. So what would you say as like an introductions, like general introductions of the idea of going to a therapist for a PhD student? Like, what's the values you see in it, and how they can participate or take up that kind of habit to kind of go and seek help from a professional person?
Yeah, that's a really, it's difficult sometimes to say, I need help, I'm struggling. And especially like you mentioned, it can be a cultural thing. I'm also very fortunate that my family is not, shy about therapy. So I was raised in a home where when I needed to go to therapy, my mom like basically just said, "Yep, like go ahead, like let's make it happen," and found me a good therapist. And I went, and like I said, it really helped me, like even back in high school. So that was in like the early 2000s. And so, but now there's still kind of a stigma about it. And if you don't have that family, if everyone in your family kind of thinks that therapy is like, there's this misconception about it being for weak people, or, that you're crazy. And I have air quotes for the people that I can't see because we're zooming right now. But yeah, I think that stuff is just, unfortunately, it's still a little bit part of society, and it's definitely depending on your family and your culture and just personal beliefs. It can create quite a stigma, but there's a lot of really good things that are, if you're a PhD student, and also that came out of the pandemic. So firstly, if you're a PhD student, every university that I know of at least has counseling services. And that's something that I actually looked into during both my undergrad and grad times. And they can help as well. Like if you do have something like an underlying mental health condition that you need like a disability related accommodation for, they do that, and it's very discreet. You don't have to tell anybody. They are, sworn to confidentiality, unless, of course, you say that you're going to hurt yourself or someone else. Then, of course, any therapist or teacher, anyone that's a mandated reporter, has to report that. But, just general stress and stuff, they can absolutely help you and keep it private. And I think that doing something at school is a really nice way to keep it private from home life if that's necessary. And something else that's really nice that came out of the pandemic is more and more of the like Zoom or phone therapy sessions. So usually anytime it's like in the US, it's within your state. So as long as the therapist is licensed in your state, you can do like a telehealth meeting or a phone call or something with them. And so things like BetterHelp and Talkiatry, and even just some therapists that are on their own or in a private practice, they will offer that as well. So that's something that you can do, and it's just, you could say, oh, I have a meeting, or I have to take this phone call or something, and you can just, go somewhere private, and so no one's going to see you walking into a therapy office or anything. And if that's something that you're concerned about, because that it definitely, like we mentioned, it can be really like I guess more anxiety inducing to start going to therapy, because if you have some kind of anxiety or depression or something that's going on, and then you're also worried about therapy, but that actually could be the thing that helps you.
Yeah, because it's remind me of my friend who used to tell me something like, okay, think about going to therapy and let a person listen to you about what you're anxious about. But actually, when you finish the therapy session, you go back to your life. It's still the same. Like you also need to do the same thing, and so going to the therapy or taking those kind of help may not, it's just like a temporary relief, and then you also go back to reality, facing everything and by yourself. So that kind of thinking before the therapy can actually happen may prevent you from going there in the first place. So I would say that what is your takeaway, like biggest takeaway, for people who are having those kind of in, like you say, anxiety even before going to the therapy, and that it's just a temporary relief and not like a very structured and organized ways to really change the way you live or the way you think. What kind of, like, one specific example or tool that the therapy gives you to change the way that you think or live or feel, for example?
Sure. Yeah, that's I guess I never thought of it that way. So that's an interesting take, and I'm glad to hear it because hopefully somebody listening thinks that. And sort of what I would say to that is that the first couple times you go and you're kind of getting the background stuff done, you have to kind of go through your history with the person, similar to like when you go to a doctor. That might not be very relieving, like outside of therapy. But when you go to therapy consistently, what I've found, at least, if you're working with a good therapist that you mesh well with, and it's okay, by the way, to like take time to find one. Like if you go to one and it doesn't work out, then you can definitely check out other practices, and the therapist should not be offended by that. It's they want to make sure that you're getting the most out of therapy, hopefully. But anyway, I think some skills and stuff that you should learn, or I guess, let me rephrase that. I think that when you go to therapy, you should learn some skills that you can use even when you're not in therapy. And it takes a long time because you're living one way for maybe, 20, 30 years, maybe more. And then you just start going to therapy and you only have, say, 5 sessions of therapy under your belt. It might not seem like there's a big change, but some things that I've worked on with therapists before that have really helped me are something like grounding with the 5 senses. That's the kind of like a sort of like a mix of meditation and some kind of therapy technique. But basically what it is you can, what I really like to do, the way I do it is, like, you find something, so you count down like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and there's a couple different ways, but I like to try and use all the 5 senses, because sometimes you can't, and then you can just, try to find, if there's 5 things you can see, 5 things you can touch or whatever, but if you can combine all of them, it's really nice. So you touch something, like right now I have my cat next to me. He's really soft, so he's great for grounding with the 5 senses because he's super soft. And then like smell, I have a pumpkin candle that is burning right now, so it smells like pumpkin spice in my house. Taste, I have this like apple cider kind of a drink, so I can it's funny how sometimes just like drinking some water or having a little snack or something, like changing the taste in your mouth, or going into a different room where like the smell is different, or going outside where the air smells different, can really be soothing. And then seeing is not so much about soothing, but it's about changing your attention or your focus. So, for example, if I were to say, like, find 3 red things in the room, like I have some red ribbon, I have a box that's red over there, and I have a vase with candles in it, or candles with flowers in it, that's red. So those are 3 things. So wait, I did touch, taste, smell, sight, hearing, and then listen to music, or listen to a meditation, or when I used to live by the ocean, I would love to listen to the waves. So that's one thing that I love, grounding with the 5 senses, because by the time you're done with finding all those things and whatever, you've probably changed your mood at least 5 or 10%, and sometimes that's enough to just get you to the next thing. And then I think like the second biggest thing that I've taken away from therapy is questioning my own thinking. Because sometimes, like in my head, taking it back to the PhD thing for a second, I'll just sit there and I'll start writing something, and I'm looking at my own writing for so long. I think, oh, this is garbage. This is such bad writing. Like my advisor's not going to like it, and then I'm never going to get published, and then I'm never going to defend, and then I'm never going to get a job. And I just start spiraling. And then eventually I'm like homeless and, don't have a degree and in my head. So that is like a dangerous place to be sometimes, is like in your own mind. So questioning, and it's like, well, why do I think that I'm not, writing so well? Maybe I need to step away and take a break from it, or maybe I need to just send it to get some feedback from someone else. Because that's what I would end up doing is I would just question myself so much. So then when I got to that point where I was going back and obsessing over little things in my writing, I would just send it. And that was really, really scary, to send it out to my advisor, because then they have to give you feedback on the thing that you think is terrible, which is anxiety inducing in itself. But then you have to just, go and take a break and come back to it. And when you get someone else's feedback, it's not as bad as you think it was, although sometimes you do get critical feedback, but then you can change it.
Sometimes you do get critical feedback, right? And not just only from your advisor, it can be from, you send an article to a journal and get rejected, or your friend read your stuff and then they start to give their own opinion on it. So I can see that the some kind of tools that you can acquire during therapy, or can also help you to wire your way of thinking and behaving. But like, for example, when you go through the process of getting those kind of critical feedback, what are some useful tips to just, ease your anxiety or your kind of like negative thoughts about your own ability of writing, thinking, and finishing the degree, for example?
Yeah, it's hard, because you have to, at least I can't think of another event in life that that's as scary as the process of like an oral defense for your dissertation or your comprehensive
Yeah,
studies.
so basically before you go to the final oral defense, like anyone sit down and rehearses with you, or you receive the feedback from your committee members, or it's totally like a battle and you feel like you have to go to that battle. I mean,
Yeah.
psychologically speaking, psychologically prepare for that date.
Yeah, I've gotten feedback sometimes, and it's like in general, just from like on my dissertation, for example, and I saw the feedback and I actually just, I cried, and I just said, I can't deal with this right now. And I would just put it away, and maybe for like 3 days, I wouldn't look at it. And I was like, well, I'll see how I feel about it in 3 days, and kind of just let that time go by. And then when you go back to it, you see it's not, it's not that bad. And you kind of can like try to see what the suggestions are in it, instead of seeing it just as an attack. And then as far as the defense, yeah, I just would rehearse and rehearse and rehearse, just go through it a million times. And I think knowing too, like, it's never going to be perfect, because that's something that I think I personally struggle with a lot. And I think that a lot of people probably attracted to a PhD are the kind of people who are perfectionists and like struggle with that. And it's like it's a disease, perfectionism, because there's no such thing. And there's actually a Salvador Dali quote that I really like, and it's have no fear of perfection, you'll never reach it. And I used to really not like that quote, but after doing my dissertation now, if I went back and read it, I would probably think, oh my goodness, like, look at this paragraph, it doesn't feel finished, and I could have said so much more here, and I should have done this, and actually, my data collection is terrible, I should have just started the whole thing over. But if you get into that trap, then it goes back to what I was saying before, where I would just spiral. And so for me, I think remembering that there's no such thing as perfect, that really, I don't know when I learned that or how. I wish I did, because then I wish I could tell you right now. But that was like a major thing that happened for me during my PhD program. And that really helped to know that there's just there's always going to be more edits you can make.
Yeah,
But
so I can see that the way that you kind of phrase, for example, it's not like a comment. It's more like a suggestion for you to thrive, or it's a suggestion for you to better your writing and then make sure that you can kind of defend it successfully, right? So basically your committee should be your support system rather than a committee um, that threaten you and like you to fail it, right? But I guess it's take a lot of courage and preparation for you to rethink and